My fingers trembled as I slid the USB drive into Richard's old laptop. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered, and a folder appeared, labeled Legacy. Inside were dozens of files, financial reports, property documents, and hidden correspondence between Richard and a name I didn't recognize, Eleanor Briggs. My pulse quickened. The emails began innocently enough, discussions about investments, company strategy, philanthropy. But as I read further, their tone shifted. There was intimacy between the lines. "You always understood what I couldn't say," Richard had written in one message. Another read, "Once it's finalized, she'll be taken care of, I promise." She. Was that me or someone else? I scrolled faster, my heart racing. In the most recent message, dated only a week before his death, Richard wrote, "If something happens to me, the phone holds the rest. Only Margaret can open it, she'll know how." I stared at the screen. The phone wasn't just a symbol, it was a key. But a key to what? The envelope in my hand felt heavier now. I tore it open, half expecting another cryptic message, but instead found a letter written in Richard's steady script. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, I am no longer able to explain myself in person. What I built, our empire, wasn't as clean as it appeared. Years ago, I made decisions to protect our family from people who would have destroyed us. To keep you safe, I created accounts, shell companies, and yes, secrets. The children think they've inherited everything, but what they have is only the surface. The truth, our true legacy, is on the phone. You and only you can unlock it because the code is something only we shared. Forgive me for the lies I told to keep you away from the fire. I hoped one day you'd understand that I was building not for myself, but for you." Tears blurred my vision as I reread his words. My anger, confusion, grief, they twisted into something heavier, understanding. Richard hadn't betrayed me. He had hidden me from danger. I grabbed the phone again, the message echoing in my mind. The code is something only we shared. My thoughts raced through decades of memories, birthdays, anniversaries, phrases only we used. Then suddenly it came to me. Every night before bed, Richard would whisper the same line, "Forever, just us two." It was our secret vow, spoken only in the quiet of our home. I typed it in. The screen flashed. Then, with a soft chime, it unlocked. Dozens of files filled the display. Offshore accounts, confidential documents, and one folder marked simply, "For you." I opened it to find a video. Richard appeared on screen, older, weary, but smiling. "If you've found this, my love," he began, "then you've done what no one else could. What's inside these files isn't just money, it's protection. For you, for our children, from the people I once trusted. I'm sorry for the distance, but it was the only way." My tears fell freely as his face faded from the screen. For a long while, I sat in silence, the glow of the phone screen casting soft light across the study. Richard's words echoed through me, each one unraveling the bitterness that had taken root since his death. He hadn't left me behind. He had left me in charge. The empire my children celebrated as their inheritance was merely the facade. The real power, the real truth, rested in my hands. I opened the files one by one. Offshore accounts linked to charities, hidden partnerships with environmental foundations, even anonymous donations to orphanages in Richard's name. He had built shadows not to deceive, but to protect, to preserve something untouchable, something clean. The man I thought I'd lost to ambition had been quietly trying to redeem every wrong step he'd taken. Yet the revelation brought no easy peace. The more I learned, the more I saw how deeply he'd shielded Olivia and James from the dangers that came with his fortune. The phone contained letters addressed to both of them, letters I hesitated to open. He wanted me to decide when they would learn the truth. That decision sat on my chest like a weight I wasn't ready to lift. In the morning, I met James in the garden. The autumn air was sharp with the scent of fading roses. He looked tired, his once confident expression softened by concern. "Mom," he said gently, "I've been thinking, maybe Dad was trying to tell us something with that phone." I smiled faintly. "He was, darling. More than any of us realized?" He frowned, confused. "You know what's on it?" "Yes," I said simply. "And for now, that's enough." I saw the relief in his eyes, though he didn't understand why. Perhaps one day I would tell him and Olivia everything. But not yet. They still saw the world through their father's empire, wealth, influence, image. Richard wanted me to protect them from the storm beneath it. That evening, I sat once more in his study. The phone rested beside the letter, both now unlocked, both now understood. I realized I didn't need to chase answers anymore. What I needed was to decide what to do with the truth. I thought about Richard's last words in the video. It was the only way. Perhaps he had been right. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about protecting from afar, even if it means being misunderstood. I closed the phone, placed it gently in the drawer, and locked it. Not out of secrecy this time, but out of love. The mansion was quiet again, but no longer hollow. The silence felt different, less like loss, more like peace. I could almost hear Richard's voice, warm and certain, as if he were still somewhere near, forever, just us two. I whispered into the empty room, and for the first time since his passing, I felt that he had kept his promise. When Richard died, the house felt too large for breath. Every echo of his laughter lingered between the walls, like a memory unwilling to let go. I had imagined grief would come like a thunderstorm, loud, unbearable, brief. Instead, it seeped in quietly, settling into the cracks of my days. My children, Olivia and James, filled the house with movement and hushed phone calls, arranging lawyers, meetings, and paperwork. I, meanwhile, sat by the window most mornings, watching the city stretch awake, wondering how 40 years of marriage could fit into a single word on a legal document. Widow. Richard had been a man of immense charisma, a self-made entrepreneur who could convince anyone of anything. People said he built his $50 million empire from dust, but I knew better. He built it from obsession, from sleepless nights and boardroom battles that left him more absent than present. I loved him fiercely, even when his ambition felt like a third person in our marriage. And though wealth surrounded us, I often sensed he was protecting something I wasn't meant to see. The day of the will reading, I wore the navy dress Richard always liked. Olivia arrived in a tailored suit, her hair pulled back tight, every inch her father's daughter. James, on the other hand, looked uneasy. He was never as comfortable in the world of money and power. The lawyer's voice was steady, emotionless, as he listed assets, properties, investments. And then, like a pause between heartbeats, came the words that changed everything. To my wife, Margaret, I leave my personal phone and the memories we shared. My children will inherit the remainder of my estate. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. The silence that followed was almost cruel. Olivia didn't look at me. She only adjusted her papers and nodded. James shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. My hands trembled as the lawyer placed a sleek black phone into them, a device that suddenly weighed more than any diamond I'd ever worn. Afterward, Olivia offered a rehearsed condolence. Dad probably meant it symbolically, Mom. You know how sentimental he could be. But Richard had never been sentimental. Strategic, yes. Calculated, always. If he left me that phone, there was a reason. That night, I sat at our kitchen table, the phone before me like a sleeping secret. The screen was locked. No fingerprint access, no passcode hint, just a dark reflection of my own face. I tried birthdays, anniversaries, even the date we first met. Nothing. I should have felt defeated. Instead, I felt the first spark of something else, an ache sharper than grief, more demanding than sorrow. Richard was gone, but his silence wasn't, and I had the feeling that behind that locked screen waited the truth about everything he'd built and everything I'd lost. The days following the will reading blurred into a quiet storm. I wandered through the mansion as if I were trespassing in my own life. Every corner whispered Richard's presence, the scent of his cologne on his office chair, the half-read book by his bedside, the faint trace of his handwriting on a note that simply read, "Don't forget to trust the timing." I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. I had lived comfortably enough, and our children deserved their share. But it wasn't about the money. It was about why. Why had he left me out of everything we built together? I found myself drawn again and again to the phone. Its glossy surface reflected my uncertainty. I took it to a technician, a young man with nervous hands who looked at me with polite pity. "It's encrypted, ma'am," he said. "The security on this, it's not typical. Someone didn't want it unlocked easily." His words hung in the air like a verdict. That night, I sat in Richard's study, a room I had rarely entered when he was alive. The mahogany shelves towered above me, lined with trophies, photographs, and the artifacts of a life meticulously curated. But on the lowest shelf, tucked behind financial reports, I found a small leather journal. Inside were short notes, almost like reminders. One page stopped me cold. If something happens, Margaret will understand. She always does. Understand what? The next morning I called James. He was always the gentler of the two, empathetic, easily read. James, I asked carefully, did your father ever mention anything unusual about his business lately? He hesitated. Mom, Dad's work was complicated. Maybe he didn't want to burden you with it. Or maybe, I said, he didn't trust anyone else. He sighed. Mom, please, don't start imagining things. Dad loved you. You know that, but love, I realized, was a fragile word. It could coexist with secrets. It often did. Later that evening, Olivia called. Her tone was crisp, practiced. Mom, I know this is hard, but Dad made his decisions. Let's not dwell on the past. Her words stung more than she knew. To Olivia, emotions were inefficiencies. She inherited her father's ambition, but none of his warmth. After we hung up, I returned to the phone. Something inside me refused to let it go. I plugged it in, watching as the battery icon glowed to life. A small light blinked on the top corner, just once, faintly, before disappearing again. It felt almost deliberate, like a pulse. In that quiet moment, I knew the truth wasn't buried in the will or the fortune. It was here, in this silent device that refused to speak. And whatever Richard had left behind, it wasn't meant for anyone else to find, except me. Sleep became a stranger. Every night I sat in Richard's study with the locked phone beside a half-finished cup of tea, trying to make sense of the man I thought I knew. The silence of the house pressed against me, thick with unanswered questions. I started going through his old files, letters, and documents, anything that might reveal a clue. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized Richard's world was built on layers I had never been allowed to see. On the fourth night, while scrolling through our old family computer, I found an email draft saved under his name but never sent. It contained just 2 words. For Margaret. Attached was a small file titled Vault. My heart pounded as I opened it, only to be met with another password request. Locked again. A cruel echo of the phone. That same evening, Olivia arrived unannounced. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, her expression somewhere between irritation and concern. Mom, James told me you've been digging through Dad's things, she said, her tone clipped. I met her gaze. Your father left me something, Olivia. And I intend to understand why, she sighed sharply. You're letting grief cloud your judgment. Dad's company is in transition. The board doesn't need unnecessary drama right now. Drama? I repeated, my voice trembling. I gave your father 40 years of my life. Don't tell me to stand quietly while he turns me into a footnote. Her expression softened, just for a moment. Mom, he didn't mean to hurt you. You know how private he was. Private. The word felt like a blade. Privacy had boundaries. Secrets had consequences. After she left, I returned to the study, anger now mixing with determination. I picked up the phone again. This time I noticed something I hadn't before, a faint scratch along the side of the case near the SIM slot. I pried it open and found a small folded slip of paper tucked inside. My breath caught as I read the words written in Richard's familiar handwriting. Start with what you forgot. What had I forgotten? I sat there for hours, turning the phrase over in my mind. Then it struck me, Richard's safe in the attic. We hadn't opened it in years. The code had always been a mystery to everyone but him. I climbed the narrow stairs, heart pounding, dust coating my hands. The safe sat behind a row of old boxes, its surface cold and unyielding. I entered our anniversary date. Nothing. His birth date. Nothing. Finally, almost without thinking, I tried the date of our first miscarriage, a day he'd never spoken of again. The safe clicked open. Inside lay a single envelope and a small USB drive. My hands shook as I lifted them out. On the envelope, in Richard's steady handwriting, was a final message. If you're reading this, then you were meant to know.